Ever hit that update button,
Yeah.
and just immediately want to hit undo?
Oh, yeah.
Well, today's deep dive is kind of like that, but on a way bigger scale. We're talking the CrowdStrike incident.
Right.
Not just like a software crash. This is a full-on global tech hiccup, and the price tag is eye-watering. We're going through this EUCIP blog post you sent over,
Okay.
and honestly, it's a bit of a reality check about how fragile things are in the digital world.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? I mean, we depend on these systems for practically everything these
Yeah.
days, and the CrowdStrike situation just kind of throws that into sharp relief.
Absolutely. To set the scene for our listeners, we're talking planes grounded, hospitals on hold, banks unable to process transactions, all because of what, on the surface, seemed like a botched software update.
Yeah.
But digging into this EUCIP analysis, it was more than just a glitch, right?
Yeah, way more. It was like this chain reaction set off by some honestly pretty fundamental problems. And the EUCIP, just so everyone's on the same page, they're the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity. Their take on this is pretty alarming, especially when they put the financial fallout at over $1 billion.
Wow.
But the real story here goes a lot deeper than just the money, though.
Okay, so let's break it down then. CrowdStrike, everyone's heard of them, right? They're like the big leagues when it comes to cybersecurity software.
Yeah, they're practically a household name. I mean, tons of organizations depend on their software to, keep their systems safe from all the threats out there. What's ironic is that in this case, it was their update that actually caused the problem. Mainly on Windows devices, I should say.
Which brings us to the dreaded blue screen of death, right?
Exactly. Just picture this. Millions of computers all over the world suddenly stuck in this endless reboot loop. Can't do anything else, just reboot, reboot, reboot. And what makes it even more, I guess, concerning is the way CrowdStrike software works. To do its job properly, it needs what we call deep access to a computer's operating system.
So because their software is so deeply embedded, when this update went out, it was like it had the keys to the castle, but the keys were kind of faulty.
That's a great analogy, and that's what makes this whole incident so fascinating. It exposes the fine line between, on the one hand, having really strong security measures in place, and then, on the other hand, the potential risks that come with those very measures.
Yeah, it is like this double-edged sword, right? We want our systems to be super secure, but that often means giving up some level of control, and then that opens up the possibility for things like this to happen.
And this wasn't just a handful of computers acting up. The EUCIP report, they mentioned something like 8.5 million Windows devices were affected by this.
That's huge.
Yeah.
What kind of fallout did that actually lead to in the real world?
Well, apart from that billion-dollar figure we talked about, which is, not insignificant, the disruption was massive. Think about it. Airlines, hospitals, banks, even government services, they all rely on computers these days, right? And they were all dealing with systems going down, delays, all sorts of chaos.
Like the digital world just hit a giant speed bump.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Airlines had to ground planes, and we're talking thousands of flights canceled or delayed. Hospitals, they were dealing with postponements because they couldn't get to patient records or those really critical systems. Banks, they had trouble processing transactions, so people couldn't access their accounts. It was this really stark reminder of just how interconnected everything is now, how much we depend on this technology.
It's not even just the tech itself going down, it's the ripple
Yeah.
effect, right? Like everything's linked.
Yeah.
And the report really hammered home this idea of a single point of failure. Can you break that down for us? What does that actually mean?
It's a really important concept, and it's super relevant here. Think of like a chain, okay? Each link is a different system or piece of software, and a single point of failure is, well, it's like a weak link in that chain. If that one link breaks, the whole thing can fall apart.
Right.
With the CrowdStrike situation, that faulty update, that was the weak link, and it took down millions of devices, which really highlights how vulnerable these single points of failure can make us.
So it's not enough to just have strong individual systems. It's how they all connect that really matters. It's like if one thing goes wrong, the whole house of cards could come tumbling down.
Exactly. And then there's the impact on CrowdStrike itself.
Sure.
Trust is everything in the cybersecurity world, right? And, I mean, this obviously shook things up a bit.
Makes sense. When something like this happens, you can't help but wonder, can you really trust the systems that are supposed to be protecting you in the first place?
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? The EUCIP, they had some ideas about how to prevent something like this from happening again, right?
Yeah, they had some pretty specific recommendations, too. Like, they really stressed the need for rigorous testing, before you release any updates out into the wild.
Yeah.
Seems like common sense, but
It does, doesn't it?
I guess the CrowdStrike situation shows it's easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure, especially with software that's used by literally millions of people around the world.
Mm.
The scale of it is, well, it's mind-boggling. One thing the ECIP suggests is to do more of what they call phased rollouts. So instead of one massive update all at once, maybe start smaller with a smaller group and then gradually expand it out once you're confident and stable. So kind of like dipping your toes in the water before you do a cannonball into the pool.
Yeah. Exactly. Start slow, make sure everything's working as it should be. They also talk about the importance of continuous monitoring of IT infrastructure. We can't just, set it and forget it. We got to be able to spot those red flags, those potential issues in real time before they become these big global incidents.
So being proactive rather than reactive makes sense, but how do we actually do that? What does that look like in practice?
Well, it takes a combination of things, right? You need
Yeah.
the technology, the expertise, the whole package. We need smarter systems that can, like, detect those anomalies, those potential threats. But then you also need the people who understand what those systems are telling them, the ones who can analyze all that data and then actually respond effectively. That human element is still so critical.
It can't just be about having fancy algorithms. You need actual people who get it, who know what to do when things go sideways.
Exactly. And that actually ties into another key takeaway from the EU CIP report. They highlight the global shortage of cybersecurity professionals, which is a real concern. We need more people who are trained and skilled in this area.
So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach then, right?
Yeah.
Better tech, smarter strategies, and a workforce that's equipped to handle all this complexity.
Exactly. And we can't forget about communication and collaboration either. All the players, the cybersecurity firms, the people who use their products, government agencies, they all need to be on the same page, sharing information and working together.
It's almost like this call for collective responsibility, isn't it? This isn't just a tech industry problem. It affects all of us.
It really does. The more connected our world becomes, the more important it is for everyone to be aware, to understand the risks, and to do their part to, minimize those risks.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the CrowdStrike incident, it had some major ripple effects, really got us thinking, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think it's a good reminder that for all the amazing things about technology and how connected we are, it's all built on this foundation of trust and shared responsibility. And the CrowdStrike situation, it highlights that. It reminds us that technology is only as strong as the people behind it, the people building it, using it, and yeah, the systems we have in place to manage it all.
Well said. We all have a part to play in creating a digital world that's safer and more resilient, whether it's speaking up for better security, staying informed about the latest threats, or even just being a bit more mindful of our own digital footprint. Every little bit helps.
I completely agree. Awareness is the first step.
And on that note, dear listeners, we'll leave you with this thought. Take a moment to think about your own relationship with technology. What steps, big or small, can you take to be a more informed and responsible digital citizen?
Now there's something to think about.
Until next time, deep divers, stay curious and stay safe out there.